With its hypersonic missiles, Russia has developed a new threat, not just to Ukraine, but to the rest of the world. These missiles are fast and they hit hard, capable of hitting speeds above Mach 5. Russia's hypersonic missiles are supposed to be practically impossible to stop, even by the world's most advanced air defense systems. Then, along comes Ukraine. It has come up with a method to send Russia's Kinzhal hypersonic missiles completely off course, and it does it without firing a single shot. The country has outsmarted Russia's most advanced missile with a genius new piece of equipment. You won't believe how this new defensive system works. Ukraine has found a way to make music the master of Russia's Kinzhal missiles. It wasn't supposed to be like this for Vladimir Putin. When Russia unveiled the Kinzhal threat, it believed it had a nigh invulnerable missile that would force the rest of the world to stand up and take notice. As interesting engineering reports, Russia's hypersonic missile can reach speeds of Mach 5.7 while carrying a devastatingly powerful 1,000-pound warhead. It has a solid range too. A Kinzhal can travel about 300 miles, which is far enough to allow Russia to launch the missile from modified MiG-31s almost anywhere in Ukraine. It can certainly hit Kyiv when firing this missile from border regions or occupied territory. Kinzhal is lethal, and Ukraine has felt its full force on several occasions. The most recent of these strikes was reported by RBC Ukraine on November 8th. It says that Russia launched an enormous attack that combined Kinzhal, Caliber, and ballistic missiles with an overwhelming horde of more than 450 attack drones. Ukraine's president highlighted the results of the strike, stating, "So far 11 people have been injured, including children. Unfortunately, one person has died. My condolences to their families. Dozens have been rescued." Rescue efforts were ongoing at the time of the report, for which Russia used 7 of its Kinzhal missiles. This is just the most recent Kinzhal attack. There have been many more. Sheer speed is the Kinzhal's biggest advantage. Even Ukraine's Patriot air defense systems, which are among the most advanced in the world and have proven themselves extremely effective at stopping every other type of Russian missile, are almost helpless in the face of Russia's hypersonic behemoth. Several outlets have reported on this, with Forces News even going so far as to suggest that Russia's new super-fast missiles are Patriot-proof. It points out that Russia is firing fewer missiles at Ukraine than it has in the past, but more of those missiles are getting through. We see that in Ukraine's missile interception rate between August and September, which dropped to just 6% compared to 37% at which it stood prior. Russia has been upgrading its Kinzhal missiles, it seems, as they now combine ridiculous speed with the ability to deviate from their previously predictable paths. As the missiles zigzag their way toward Ukraine, Patriots are having a hard time dealing with them. Hypersonic missiles are such a problem for Ukraine that the spokesperson for the country's Air Force Command, Inat, was forced to comment on the issue on November 5th. Speaking about Russia's Iskander-M missiles, which have similar speeds and capabilities to the Kinzhal, Inat said that Russia has started to use its hypersonic missiles more frequently, and this in turn also makes it more difficult to shoot them down. The ratio of ballistic missiles to cruise missiles has increased compared to previous years. Plus, during an attack, a single Patriot battery looks in a certain direction it cannot see and hit Russian targets in a 360-degree radius, Inat claimed. There is a clear weakness in Ukraine's air defenses when it comes to the hypersonic threat. As 2025 draws to a close, Russia is exploiting that weakness more than ever before. Putin is hoping that the growing success of missiles like the Kinzhal and Iskander-M will send a message to the rest of the world. After all, most other countries are behind Russia when it comes to hypersonic development. As the BBC reports, the US is currently playing catch-up to both Russia and China when it comes to hypersonic missiles. Other major military powers, such as the UK, don't have anything that comes close to the likes of the Kinzhal, at least when it comes to pace. The BBC also made an interesting point in its article, stating, "For a missile to be classed as truly hypersonic in military terms, it needs to be maneuverable in flight. In other words, the army that fired it needs to be able to change course in sudden and unpredictable ways, even as it's hurtling towards its target at extreme speeds. That appears to be what Russia has achieved with its upgrades to its hypersonic missiles, which only makes them all the more deadly. The Patriot can't beat the Kinzhal, at least it can't do it consistently." For Putin, that should mean that he can parade around with his chest puffed out, knowing that Ukraine has practically no defense against the terrifying missiles that Russia is raining down on its cities. However, as so often has been the case during the war that he started, Putin has underestimated his foe. Where the most powerful military nations have failed to come up with a means to counter Russia's hypersonic missiles, Ukraine has developed something that is effective, efficient, and very capable of sending Russia's Kinzhals completely off course. That countermeasure even has a name: Lima. We'll dig much deeper into this system and what it means to Ukraine a little later in the video. For now, all you really need to know is that Lima is an electronic warfare or EW system that is currently being operated by Ukraine's Night Watch unit. This EW device has the ability to mess with the navigational signals being transmitted to Russia's hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, with the resulting confusion sending these missiles, along with their 1,000-pound warheads, completely off course. And you won't believe what Ukraine is using to mess with those navigational signals. The country has gone back in time and found that music is the answer to the Kinzhal problem. Specifically, Ukraine is using World War II-era music to take out Russia's Kinzhal missiles in what amounts to a mockery of Russia's reverence for its own role in that particular conflict. Russia is so proud of its World War II exploits that it holds an annual Victory Day parade that amounts to a showcase of the country's military hardware as Russia's leadership collectively pats itself on the back. World War II means a lot to Russia, and rightfully so. Ukraine is now forcing music from that conflict into Russia's Kinzhal missiles. Interesting Engineering has the details. It says that Ukraine's Night Watch unit has started to jam and divert Kinzhal missiles using a specific song named Our Father is Bandera. The song is a tribute to a Ukrainian nationalist leader named Stepan Bandera, who operated during World War II and has become something of a folk hero for Ukrainians who wish to maintain their independence. Bandera was a problematic figure. Though he was responsible for the creation of the Ukrainian National Army and Ukrainian National Committee in March 1945, he achieved those feats through negotiation with Nazi Germany. Bandera was a far-right nationalist himself, with some condemning him as a fascist. Others in Ukraine see him as a freedom fighter and even a martyr, meaning they're willing to overlook with whom he aligned himself during World War II so they can instead support the cause that he espoused, a Ukraine that was free of Soviet repression. It's likely this latter interpretation of Bandera that's influencing the music that Ukraine's Lima operators are pumping into the navigational systems of Russia's Kinzhal missiles. The Night Watch unit is trying to send a message to Putin that no matter how many missiles Russia fires, Ukraine will continue to fight for its sovereignty and independence. Only this time, it's allied with countries that are supporters of democracy and freedom. Controversial song choices aside, the use of music to knock out Kinzhal missiles is working. According to Interesting Engineering, the Night Watch unit has already managed to jam or divert around 12 Kinzhals since the end of October, and it's doing so by replacing the missile's satellite navigation signals with a song that will infuriate Putin and his ilk. The Lima works by drowning out the signals a missile relies upon for navigation with irrelevant noise and data. Savvy military enthusiasts will already be able to identify this as a technique called spoofing, which is one of the most effective EW tools available in an era when missiles, drones, and practically any weapon requiring some level of precision rely on GPS or Russian GLONASS signals to hit their target. Spoofing works by using radio interference to overpower weak global navigation satellite systems or GNSS signals. There are any number of reasons why a GNSS signal could be weak. By their very nature, these signals are already pretty weak, IFATCA points out. That's especially the case when they arrive at the receiver, which is the device Russia has in its hypersonic missiles to pick up the navigational signals that it's sending out. Other issues that can weaken GNSS signals can include obstructions, be they on the ground or in the Earth's atmosphere, along with poorly operated test equipment and incorrectly implemented GNSS receivers that are supposed to boost signals. We don't know what weaknesses Russia's Kinzhal missiles are dealing with, but Lima seems like it's able to exploit them. The spoofing that this new EW system can pull off causes the loss of initial signals. Those signals are then replaced with false signals such as Ukraine's World War II song, which then makes the Kinzhal missile's GNSS receiver believe that it's in a location that it isn't actually at. Patriot points out that even a cheap, software-defined radio can be enough to make a smartphone believe that it's on Mount Everest, which shows how susceptible GNSS signals can be to interference. Ukraine's Lima is much more powerful than these radios, and the effects are clear to see in the dozen or so Kinzhal missiles that have failed to hit their targets because of it. It's pretty simple to figure out what's happening to Russia's Kinzhal missiles from here. Overwhelmed by song, those missiles end up having absolutely no idea where they are. This could lead to all sorts of results, ranging from the missiles flying off course and away from its target, to the missile even believing that it has landed at its target. The important thing is that the Kinzhal gets neutralized. Its speed and ability to change directions, which are both features that make this hypersonic missile difficult for Patriots to handle, become non-factors. It doesn't matter how fast a missile can go when it's heading in the wrong direction. Interesting Engineering sums up the Lima's impact by highlighting one confirmed incident of the EW system working as intended. When Lima disrupts that connection, the missile's guidance system reverts to an inertial navigation system that quickly accumulates errors, the outlet reports. As a result, missiles may miss their targets by hundreds of yards. Recent imagery has shown one Kinzhal veering off course and striking near Starokostiantniv in western Ukraine. This raises an interesting point. While Lima is proving effective against Russia's hypersonic missiles, it's by no means a perfect solution. Russia's Kinzhals generally still end up touching down on Ukrainian soil and detonating, which is no less devastating in terms of sheer explosive power than it would be if those missiles were hitting their intended targets. But that's the point. Those missiles aren't hitting what they're supposed to hit, and when those intended targets are often Ukraine's cities and energy infrastructure, it's far better to essentially convince a Kinzhal to detonate in a field somewhere than it is to allow it to touch down on far more valuable infrastructure. Ukraine protects what it needs to protect. Russia ends up losing a missile that's estimated to cost them about $10 million per unit. Though it may not be perfect, Lima represents a massive leap forward in Ukraine's EW capabilities. That's according to Nico Langer, who is a former German defense official whom Interesting Engineering quotes as stating that Ukraine's EW engineers have created a system capable of jamming Russian aerial bombs with UMPK. A UMPK is another name for Russia's glide bombs that are nowhere near as fast as Kinzhal missiles, pack a similar amount of explosive force, and have been deployed in massive numbers against Ukraine. On November 11th, David Axe claimed that Russia's fighter jets are launching 5,000 glide bombs per month at Ukraine, with that volume being enough that it's even wearing out Soviet-era fighters that are already approaching the ends of their lifespans. Like the Kinzhal, glide bombs use satellite navigation as part of their targeting, making them just as vulnerable to Ukraine's spoofing songs as Russia's hypersonic missiles. And it seems likely that the Lima will have a similar impact on any Russian weapon that uses GNSS signals to navigate. That means that Lima isn't just a Kinzhal killer. It could be used against everything from drones to hypersonic missiles. In its April 2025 profile of the Lima, Defense Redefined revealed that the EW system is also more versatile than Interesting Engineering's focus on spoofing suggests it to be. In addition to spoofing signals, Lima can also outright jam signals and is capable of some form of undefined cyber interference, which suggests that Lima could serve as a counter to Russia's own EW equipment. The same outlet also points out that a weapon's range, which is so often an advantage, becomes a major problem when Ukraine is using the Lima. The further a bomb is launched from the Lima system's location, the more distortion accumulates over time, resulting in substantial targeting errors, Defense Redefined reports. It then goes on to reiterate the effectiveness of Lima against Russia's glide bombs. In some instances, glide bombs have reportedly failed to reach their intended targets altogether, either detonating harmlessly in open fields or remaining unexploded. Earlier we told you that the Kinzhal has a 300-mile range. That range is large enough for Russia's fighter jets to launch the weapon far outside of Ukrainian air defenses that might be able to take these jets down. But in a case of extreme irony, the very range that protects Russia's jets is the same range that makes Kinzhal more vulnerable to Lima, assuming the EW system is deployed early enough in the Kinzhal's flight. Militarny also took a look at the Lima in its own April article, and it highlighted what can happen to a missile when it loses access to its GNSS signal and has to rely on inertial navigation, which is what the Lima is doing to Kinzhals. The outlet used the example of American-made JDAM kits, noting that those kits have a circular probable error of between 1 and 5 meters, or between 3.2 and 16.4 feet. That is extremely accurate. However, the loss of connection to a GNSS signal increases that margin of error to 13 meters, or about 42.5 feet, after just 38 seconds. If the signal is lost for 100 seconds, the JDAM's circular probable error rockets up to 30 meters, or a little over 98 feet. Apply those findings to the Kinzhal, and you see why Russia has such a problem with the Lima. Ukraine using World War II-era songs to spoof the missile's signal is a slap in the face to Putin. But Russia's leader will be far more worried about the loss of GNSS over extended periods and what it means for Russia's missile assaults when weapons that cost $10 million per unit are being sent so far off course within a matter of minutes of being exposed to Lima. Putin will also be worried about what Lima represents. Even now, almost 4 years into its brutal war with Russia, Ukrainian ingenuity is overcoming Russian muscle. Interesting Engineering makes that point in its closing remarks on the Lima, stating, "The Lima's reported success highlights how Ukraine is adapting to Russia's long-range strike campaign through innovation rather than parity of firepower. Ukraine's innovation enabling its asymmetrical warfare tactics, both offensive and defensive, is a huge reason why it's been able to defend against Russia's numerical advantage for so long. According to the Atlantic Council, Ukraine's innovative defense sector is so important that it's become the country's trump card in its fight against Russia." The outlet offers examples, noting how Ukraine's plans to build 4.5 million drones in 2025 were made possible by garage engineers and a slew of startups that all focus their efforts on building ever more advanced attack and surveillance drones. Ukraine's innovation has allowed it to destroy enough of Russia's Black Sea fleet to make that fleet a non-factor in the war after everybody assumed it would offer Russia a massive advantage. Ukraine is building naval drones to complement its aerial drones, along with a host of missiles that enable it to strike deeper and harder into Russian territory. Systems like Lima represent that same spirit of innovation, only on the defensive end of the scale. The pattern by this point has become simple. Russia presents a problem with a new weapon, such as a hypersonic missile. Ukraine's genius engineers somehow come up with solutions to those problems that cost far less money to make than the problems themselves, and are often deployed in record time to shatter whatever advantage Russia thinks it has. Lima is just the latest example of that spirit of innovation in action. Now that the EW system has proven itself against some of the most terrifying missiles that Russia has to offer, you have to assume that Ukraine will be moving it toward mass production. Right now, Lima is being deployed by just one Ukrainian unit, and it's already taken out around a dozen Kinzhals in a couple of weeks. Just how impactful will this revolution in EW be when Ukraine is able to deploy it across the country? We may find out if "Our Father is Bandera" starts ringing in the GNS receivers of more of the missiles that Russia is sending into Ukraine's territory. While Ukraine's garage engineers are coming up with high-tech systems that are beyond what anybody else could ever have imagined, Russia's would-be battlefield innovators are having a much harder time of it. They're trying. Those wannabe innovators are coming up with armor that is supposed to protect their tanks, for instance, but that armor isn't working. Russian tanks are getting killed by their own armor, and you'll find out how if you check out our video. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's latest innovations. And thank you, as always, for watching.